to the American Amnion Association Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring the groundbreaking advancements in birth tissue-derived medical technologies, the power of collaboration, and the future of regenerative healthcare. Each episode, we bring you thought leaders, industry pioneers, and medical experts who are shaping the next frontier of healing and patient care. I'm your host, Theresa Hong. Today, we're thrilled to welcome David Pennington. With a strong clinical foundation as a registered nurse and a decorated academic background, including a Bachelor and Associate of Science in Nursing and an MBA from the Jack Welch Management Institute, where he graduated summa cum laude, David blends hands-on healthcare experience with visionary business. His leadership in developing clinical programs, scaling sales forces, and launching cutting-edge tissue products brings unparalleled insight into the evolving role of amniotic tissue in modern healthcare. David is a dynamic biotech executive with decades of experience in biologics and human tissue innovations, and has led groundbreaking advancements in regenerative medicine, from driving growth at Tissue Regenix and Tissue Banks International to shaping the future of amniotic applications in wound care and ophthalmology. With a proven track record of building clinical programs from the ground up, scaling high-performing sales organizations, and spearheading the launch of innovative birth tissue-based products, David offers a unique and powerful perspective on the early adoption of amniotic tissue in healthcare and its transformative potential as the field continues to evolve at a rapid pace. Welcome to the show, David.
Wow, thank you. That was great. I appreciate that.
Hey, absolutely. No, it's not often that we get somebody with your vast experience in the field.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And just to let the viewers know, this was really an awesome experience because we kind of ran into each other on LinkedIn, and I was so impressed with your background that I invited you on, and you graciously accepted. So thank you.
Thank you. It's just by chance, but glad to be here. Really, really, really happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that really fascinated me about you is that you've done so much in just so many different fields in tech and in biotech, but you really kind of started early on in the birth tissue kind of rise in medical innovation. Can you kind of elaborate on that for me?
Sure. I was really fortunate at the time when I was an executive at Tissue Banks International. I had a friend who decided to start an organization called Biologics, and he was sort of on the front end of things with regards to a number of areas, number of verticals, whether it was orthopedic, spine, eventually ophthalmology, wound care, of course. And he and I were friends at the time, and he told me about this concept, and I thought, well, this sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, it could really be good stuff. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that it's just amazing. It's amazing science. And so eventually we started collaborating on some things, and he talked to me for about 2 years into joining the company. I kept saying no because I was happy where I was. But ultimately, I realized where things were going, and so excitedly joined the organization. And we launched products in spine, orthopedics, wound care, and then eventually ophthalmology, which was sort of my sweet spot. I had been in that realm for a few years, and I'd gotten to know a lot of the key opinion leaders around the country. And at the time, there were just a couple of other companies in that space, and so we were the third that decided to join in. And it was really amazing to me. So I had seen how it worked in wound care, and so many examples of it just seemed like magic how it worked. And so I thought, well, let's try this in ophthalmology. And so we did, and eventually launched, and it went really well, as you would expect. So
Yeah. So and I know that ophthalmology, was your sweet spot. I'm wondering though, because I mean, obviously this podcast, I mean, it's for everybody, and for the layman, I think that most people are aware of the wound care and even the ophthalmology part of it, which I do want to get into more later. But the spine, using it for ortho, I don't know if many people are aware of that. Could you just kind of give us a little bit of background as far as what surgeons are using that for in that realm?
So in the past, it was primarily used as an adhesion barrier to prevent surgical scarring, long-term scarring that could provide some additional problems. And there were many examples back in the day where um, the patient would have to be looked at again, and the everything was intact from the amnion. It was just it blew my mind how well it worked in that realm. And with regards to orthopedics at the time, now not the case now, but the fluid was something that was utilized
Yeah,
for
for sure.
anti-inflammatory processes and growth factors and things like that. And so, as opposed to say getting a steroid injection, you might opt for that at the time. And I saw case after case of that working very well also. Because essentially, it would come in contact with the tissue that was needed to sort of heal or regrow. And over the course of a minimal amount of time, you would see that,
Yeah.
whether it was with ultrasound or MRI or other imaging techniques. And so then ultimately for me, of course, it grew into, okay, how can we use this in corneal ulcers or ocular surface diseases? And I do believe, and now it's not the case yet, but I also think that there's some implications for dry eye, which everybody in the world has. And so I think at some point with evolving technology, we might see that someday. But in those other areas, I mean, for example, wound care. I remember there was a patient who had unfortunately lost her lower leg, and there was a wound that was not closing. And so we came in at the time, we were working on some case studies. We injected around the borders of the wound, laid some amniotic membrane over top, and it closed in about 25 weeks. And so this patient in the beginning was non-compliant, was not happy. I walked in when I would see her, and she was just really down in the dumps. And within a few weeks, she was like, wait a second, this is happening. This is really happening. And then, like I said, 25 weeks in, I went and saw her and it was closed. And she was just a different person. I mean, she was compliant. She was happy. She was excited. She was like, you know what? No more of my leg is coming off. And so I've seen it work so many times, and it's still exciting to watch that sort of outcome for patients.
Yeah, yeah, it is amazing. I always say, that I think that, amniotic membrane and also, I really am a huge, huge, huge supporter and advocate of amniotic fluid as well. I do understand that, there were a couple of bad actors in the field several years ago, and the FDA
Yep.
put a halt to it. But
Mm.
I'm happy that there are some right to try states, and that that's still being able to that's still a choice for patients. And so,
Right.
to your point with that woman, I mean, I am really hoping that this type of medicine becomes standard of care and not the last resort,
Right.
because it just works so well. And again, to your point, just it's not only the physical pain, but it's the mental pain.
Right.
It's the spiritual pain. I think it's just there are a lot of variables that go into it that I think using amnion as the first kind of go-to would alleviate a lot
Right.
of that, just not only physical stress but just mental stress.
Right.
So yeah, yeah, that's
That was definitely the case with this person, and I'd seen it in other instances as well. So.
yeah, yeah. So tell me then, so what piqued your interest with the ophthalmic, can I say that, ophthalmic side of things?
Yeah, try spelling it. It's even worse.
third, third time's a charm.
Right. So for me, again, it was sort of my field. And I thought, you know what, if other people can do it, I think I can do it too. So I looked into the science behind the processing of dry amniotic membrane from one company at the time. The other was cryopreserved. And we weren't going that route. So there was really no reason to even attempt that. But I looked at their technology, I looked at our technology. It was slightly different. We tried it on a couple of patients that, I mean, basically, it's amnion, so it's human tissue. So, and it's minimally manipulated. So we thought we'd give it a shot, and it worked really well. And so then I thought, okay, let's go to the market. Let's get some voice of the customer opinions and see what we need to do. And I overwhelmingly heard that what was out there was too expensive, that it was too big. We needed smaller discs for ocular concerns. And so we developed and launched a 12 millimeter disc. We were the first to do it. And then pricing, of course, because of the cost of goods sold was lower because of the size. We were able to come in at a better price point for surgeons and for patients. And what I learned is that it worked 99% of the time. And in the 1% of the time it didn't work for various epithelial defects, ulcers, wounds, ocular surface diseases, things of that nature. And for the 1 out of 100 times that it didn't work, 10 days later, you'd throw another one and it would. And so the reimbursement was good. Nobody was really going to optometrists at the time saying, hey, this is an option for you too. And so we launched into that category and found a lot of success there. So, I mean, for me, it was exciting because you had patients coming in with these chronic problems, and you could throw a piece of amnion on, a disc on, and it would take literally 15 to 20 minutes to do. And they would come back in a week later, and 9 times out of 10, it was done. It was healed.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
for me, with my background, and I have a clinical background as well as a registered nurse, it was exciting to see that and to see that it not only did it work for doctors, there was a decent reimbursement in place, but it worked for patients every single time. And that enhances a practice, enhances their experience. And in this day and age where patient experience is becoming more and more important to physicians in every vertical, anything that you can find that works every time and gives them a good experience is definitely worthwhile, and there's an ROI there. So for
Yeah.
me, it was I got a few case studies together and built a sales force, and off we went.
That's awesome. And that was pretty groundbreaking. How long ago was this?
So we launched in, I want to say 2013. So at the
Yeah.
time, there were two companies that had been in space for about 20 years each. And so they were like, wait a minute, what's this? Who's this new guy, coming in? And so they weren't
Yeah.
necessarily thrilled, but competition is good. And I feel
Yes. Well, a competition is good. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say competition is good because I think that it allowed you and your company basically to create a better graft all the way around,
yeah.
because prior to that it was solely that cryopreserved, and boy, that I would not want that in my eye.
Uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It works. A friend of mine is now the CEO of that company. And so I have nothing bad to say about it because it works, but it's a little
Oh, sure.
uncomfortable.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's very, very innovative. And I mean, did when you were working with this company, what made you say, oh, wow, well, we can make this smaller and we can also make it, dehydrated. We can make it air dry. I mean, what kind of what kind of pushed you in that direction?
we were kind of going down that road anyway, because frankly, cryopreservation is just such an arduous process. And so we were thinking, we're going to go down this road instead. And then looking at the only company out there that had that kind of a product, and how well they had done in their marketing and the things they were doing, we thought, well, we could do that too. Our process was a little different. It wasn't, it was using chemicals instead of heat to dry. And so we certainly went through a lot of due diligence and the rigors of research to figure out if we were doing the right thing and doing it correctly. And it turns out we were. So going down that road, we sort of committed all of our resources and the things that we were doing to it. And it turned out really well. So we were really excited to come out with a product that was very helpful for patients overall.
That's awesome. And what was your, when you became an RN, and I mean, got all of these great credentials behind you, what were you what were you hoping to accomplish? What were your first, kind of rounds and things of that nature when you became an RN? Did it
It's kind
have
of
anything to
funny.
do with this, or?
No, it didn't actually. When I first got into it, I just fell into critical care and trauma, and that's what I did. And then ultimately, I also fell into organ procurement and transplant, which is where I got my first taste of tissue transplant as well. And so that one thing led to another, and eventually, I sort of migrated through the world of medical devices. I was in a lot of startups in that regard, going from clinical education and development to marketing to sales to general management. And then ultimately, my first executive position in 2008 with Tissue Banks International, another tissue-based company, in ophthalmology and also on the musculoskeletal side. But I ran the ocular division. And that's when I started to think, this is really an area that I love. The people in ophthalmology are the greatest in the world. So wonderful to work with. I have tons of friends still in that segment as I still work in it. But then ultimately getting into the world of Amnion, it was like, this is something, and to this day, I tell people I've worked in one startup where a product works every single time.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And yeah, and it's funny because obviously, just being from the industry, and I know that, this month is literally, yeah, National, Donate Life Month.
Right.
And it's interesting because, everybody, well, not everybody, but I would say probably about, gosh, at least 80% of people that I talk to that are now on, the birth tissue side of things, started in kind of that cadaveric, just
Right.
on that side. And I just always say that, oh my goodness, to have both sides of that experience, it just you've got to be a very, very special individual, I think, to, handle that. And then obviously, come on this side. And I always just say on this side, it's all about basically celebrating birthdays, it's
That's
all
right.
about
That's right. Yeah.
just,
There's no downside really to speak
right,
of. So
right.
it's a lot better actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, both sides of the business have their own challenges, and certainly on the cadaveric side, it's tough. I mean, it's tough, but I've been very fortunate to work with some great companies with some innovative scientists, and have considered myself very lucky.
So what do you, having so much experience, what do you hope to see in the future regarding, these birth tissue derived products and just moving forward in just all just arms of medicine?
Well, I really hope that the US FDA can sort of get their act together, because there's a lot of things that people around the world are doing. I worked with a guy several years ago named Neil Reardon, and he's doing stuff that's just unbelievable down in Panama with the Stem Cell Institute. And I would love to see organizations in the United States to be able to do the same thing, to be afforded the same opportunities, because there's so much that we can do that we're not doing when it comes to this. I mean, the mesenchymal stem cell is an amazing thing. And if there's a way that we could somehow get that through, I don't know a ton about the political world. I've worked through the rigors of FDA approvals. I've gone to CMS for codes and things of that nature, but it's been a bit. But I would love to see some of those things be more readily available for patients, because they work. I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. It works. So, and I
Yeah.
know there has to be regulations around these things because people, you know, corporate entities or certain people can take advantage. But at the same time, I really would like to see some of these things get relaxed a little bit, so we can start, providing these great outcomes for patients. So I can have more stories about the 25-week closure of the wound, and things of that nature, because that literally could happen for us every day if we were allowed to do it.
Right. Yeah. No, that excuse me, that's great insight, and I am very grateful for, organizations like the AATB. We're really kind of the only one that I think obviously understand, just we're not going to throw it out willy-nilly. But I think that they have been huge, proponents, obviously, of birth tissue, all tissue, as far as regulations are concerned. But I think that they work hard to collaborate and to recommend things with the FDA in regard to, hey, let's not close down the whole thing. Let's kind of open this up a little bit more so that, as you said, more people have the opportunity to, experience these great these great medical innovations that are happening all around. There are a lot of studies going around. There's a lot of, things that are happening just, behind the scenes, and they're spending millions and millions of dollars for something that I'm quite confident, will work. And
Right.
I hope that they do kind of, take some of that pressure off, not, just monetary and just the regulation side, so that more and more people, have the opportunity to receive treatment that they may need. So
Exactly. Yep. Agreed. Yep.
yeah. So it's incredible to me as far as just the advancements, but also in terms of kind of the sometimes stifling that those advancements.
Well, and
So
think of where we could be at this
right.
point. I mean, I think daily about different things that are potential for things. I mean, I've often thought about infusing the discs with amniotic fluid. What would that look like? And I mean, the possibilities are endless with it, and we just need the opportunity to take advantage of those.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Obviously you're so big on the ocular side, and I in my weird, crazy brain, I'm always thinking, oh my goodness, if what would happen, let's say, with a woman or a man that had severe psoriasis because of, just instead of a transplant. Wow, what would happen if, somebody did an investigation as far as
Right.
injecting amniotic fluid, into the liver and seeing if that would repair it, as opposed to having to, you know, wait on a list and
Transplant list.
hope. Yeah. So yeah, I'm with you on that. My brain is just a million times just going, oh my goodness, there's just so much
Well,
potential.
you mentioned earlier spine, and I saw a situation years ago where a woman had a fusion done. They had to put a cage in, cancellous chips. They injected some amniotic fluid into the cancellous chips. 30 days later, and a fusion takes, or it used to take, between a year and 18 months, typically. 30 days later, she had a fall. And I think she was skiing, which she should not have been, but she was. And that's
Compliance.
right. And she had an MRI done and was completely fused. 30 days. 30 days.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying that is typical of that situation, but that in and of itself tells you, I mean, it works. It works.
Right. Right. No, for sure. For sure. Yeah. My brother, I mean, we were kind of having this conversation offline, a week ago, but my brother had, a torn labrum in his shoulder, and the doctor had said, hey, surgery. And my brother was just adamant. And so I said, hey, I can, Utah, just those types of places, right to try. It's like, let's see if we can't, get you some, amniotic fluid
Right.
and see if that will help. And the injection, was given in two different places, and it's been almost 30 days, and he is completely and totally back to where he
Wow.
was.
Awesome.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So it is. So it's amazing. So what is it, what do you, I mean, so we've discussed as far as what you'd like to see in the future, as far as with, birth tissue derived medicine and things of that nature. But what would you like to do personally in this field now? It seems like you're kind of in a little bit of a transition phase, and
Mhm.
and you know a lot about the subject, and I'm curious to know what you'd like to do.
Yeah, I am in a transition phase right now, and definitely want to get back in the field. I'm not sure exactly how right now. I probably as chief commercial officer or CEO of an organization that's just starting out. That's sort of my sweet spot. I'm good at working with people that are smarter than me and taking things like that to the market. So that's something that I'm looking to do, or get involved in an organization that's already doing great things and wants to do greater things. But I'm definitely in the market to get back into that world. I was by far the happiest doing those things. And with the things that are on the horizon right now, with regards to the science behind it, I think it's a really good time to sort of get back into that business. So I'm excited about doing that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me
Yeah.
today.
Thank
This
you.
was fantastic. I really appreciate it. It's fascinating. And I'd love for you to be back on again once you land somewhere where your dream job,
Yeah.
with that, that would be absolutely fantastic. But I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
been very, very informative. And I just love hearing about people who have, kind of been at the forefront and have seen the evolution of this and see the continued potential of this.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate having me on and look forward to talking again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining.
you.
All right. Take care.